If you've been watching Portland's housing market, I've got some news for you. In the last few years, we saw bidding wars, cash buyers, and homes selling in days. But something big has changed in 2025. The Portland area has over 1,700 listings compared to just 925 listings a few months ago. So smart buyers are discovering they have more negotiating power than they've had in the last 5 years. But how and why? I'm Will Van Wickler, your Portland area agent, and today I'm revealing all the data, reasons, and areas that show you exactly where the best opportunities are hiding. So come with me. First, let me paint a picture of where we stand right now. Portland's median sale price peaked at around $648,000 in July of 25. Then it eased to around $590,000 in August. When you compare that to mid-2024 levels, we're looking at a 12.9% price drop year over year. Meanwhile, other sources list the median sales price at $669,000, a 9% drop year over year. Before anyone panics about the market crash, let me put this in perspective. These prices are still way higher than before the pandemic. What we're seeing is a market correction, not a collapse. Portland home values are setting into a more realistic range, in my opinion. This comes after a crazy run-up we saw from 2020 to early 24. Active listings in the Portland, South Portland metro area just reached over 5,000 in mid-July 25. That's way up from the under 1,000 listings during the pandemic frenzy. And what does that mean for you? Choices. For the first time in years, buyers have options. During the peak market madness, you might see 1 or 2 homes in your price range and neighborhood. Now you might see 10 to 15. That really does change the buying experience. Sellers received an average of 101.4% of the list price in July of 25, so still above asking. Days on market have increased from the record fast sales of 21. Back then, homes often sold in under 10 days, what felt like 10 hours, honestly. Now it's an average of 19 to 26 days, depending on the sale, price, and the neighborhood. It's still very fast, but this means we have a little bit more of a balanced market. Buyer demand and seller supply are closer to being equal. We're not in a buyer's market yet, but we're certainly not in a seller's market that defined the last 3 years. And we've got 3 major forces changing Portland's housing landscape. Understanding these will help you make better decisions whether you're buying or selling a home. Before we dive into them, do me a solid and subscribe if you want the real story on Maine's coastal markets. I'm not giving you generic national trends. This is actual data coming from somebody who was born and raised here. Trust me, you'll want to catch what's coming next. All right, so after dipping to near 6% in late 24, 30-year fixed interest rates in Maine have climbed back towards 6.72% by early September of 25 when we're recording this video. That might not sound like much, but let me show you what it means in real dollars. On a $600,000 home with 20% down, the difference between a 6% and 7% rate is about $394 more per month. That's a lot of money. Over the life of the loan, that's about $142,000 in extra interest alone. For many buyers, that extra monthly payment is the difference between qualifying for their target home and having to look at properties that are a lot less expensive. So this rate environment is pushing monthly payments higher and cooling buyer urgency. People who might have rushed their purchase at a lower interest rate are definitely taking their time at 6.75%. This gives them more bargaining power, but also means they're being more selective about what they buy. And I see this every single day. Also, the initial rush of Boston and New York transplants has stabilized. Early pandemic moves were driven by emergency remote work policies. People were fleeing high-density areas. Now, 3 years later, we're seeing more careful buying decisions. Many of the people who moved to Maine in 2021 and 2022 were making emotional decisions. They thought the lifestyle changes were permanent. Now we're seeing more strategic moves. These are people who have negotiated permanent remote arrangements or found local jobs, so more methodical. This means they're not driving the exact same bidding war intensity we saw during the peak. Lastly, Greater Portland has hit an affordability threshold. This is driving some buyers to hesitate or seek alternatives outside the core city. That's because many local buyers are being priced out of Portland proper, which in turn is reducing demand for entry-level and mid-range properties within the city limits. This dynamic is pushing first-time homebuyers and young families to consider neighborhoods they might not have looked at before. This is creating opportunity in places like Biddeford, Saco, and parts of Scarborough that have a better value. All right, so not every neighborhood is experiencing this change the same way. And that's creating some really interesting opportunities and challenges, depending on where you're looking. Portland Peninsula condos and luxury homes have seen modest price gains, but longer market times. The median sale price hit about $985,000 with a 4% year-over-year increase, but properties are staying on the market for an average of 25 days. What this tells us is the luxury segment is cooling, and I see this every single day. Buyers at this price point have options, and they're taking their time. If you're selling a high-end property on the peninsula, you need to be realistic about pricing and timing. The days of listing at a premium and getting multiple bids within the week are over. And if you're buying in this segment, you have more bargaining power than you've had in years. Suburbs like Falmouth continue to command big premiums thanks to the lifestyle appeal and community features. Falmouth's median price hit over $1.1 million with a remarkable 39.9% year-over-year increase. Properties there are averaging 26 days on the market still. This shows that buyers are still willing to pay for that suburban lifestyle and community features. But again, they're being more selective about which specific property they choose. Now, Scarborough shows early signs of a cooling after huge gains in 2024. The median price is about $585,000, representing a 4.1% decline and about 35 days on the market. This suggests that even desirable suburb markets have hit price points where some buyers are pulling back. We've got some areas like Biddeford and Saco emerging as value alternatives that smart buyers are discovering right now. Biddeford's median price sits around $530,000, roughly 15% below Portland. Yet, you're getting a strong downtown redevelopment and increasingly walkable neighborhoods. Properties there are also averaging 26 days on the market with a modest 2.2% year-over-year increase. What makes these areas particularly interesting is the infrastructure investment that's happening. Downtown Biddeford has seen a major revitalization, and the commute to Portland is still very manageable. Bottom line, for buyers who want Maine coastal living without the Portland premium, these communities have compelling value. And here's something most people don't realize. Biddeford's walkable downtown core, proximity to the beach, and growing restaurant scene make it attractive not just as a value play, but as a lifestyle choice too. While market dynamics are shifting, Portland's long-term attractiveness is being improved by several development and infrastructure projects. Let's check them out. First, the historic East End District and the Old Port Waterfront have welcomed several mixed-use conversions. This includes new retail residential buildings on the main wharf, injecting brand new condo supply, while renewing commercial space that people didn't use anymore. What this means is more housing options in Portland's most desirable neighborhoods, but also increased competition for existing condos and apartments. For buyers, this is an opportunity to get new construction in established neighborhoods. For current condo owners, it means you'll face more competition when you decide to sell. So pricing and presentation will be more important than ever. And there's more. City investments in new diesel-electric hybrid ferries just happened. And projects like Better Bikeways and the Portland Bicycle Plan are boosting long-term waterfront desirability. These are infrastructure improvements that make Portland more livable and attractive to the kind of buyers who drive long-term appreciation. The ferry service expansion specifically benefits properties with water views or easy waterfront access. If you're looking at waterfront or water view properties, consider how these transportation improvements might sweeten your property's appeal and value over time. And that advice leads us to my specific ideas about what you should do about all this, whether you're buying, selling, or investing. Are you a buyer? We have around 1,700 active listings compared to just 925 listings in March of 25. You can tour multiple properties and find pricing differences. Use this inventory increase to be more selective. Also, work with lenders on rate buy-down strategies to offset high mortgage costs. Many lenders have temporary buy-down programs that can reduce your rate for the first few years of your mortgage. On a $600,000 purchase, a 2-point temporary buy-down might save you something like $400 to $500 a month for the first 2 years. Also consider neighborhood trade-offs strategically. Opting for areas like Biddeford or even West Scarborough instead of Portland proper might gain you more square feet without sacrificing your commute. Run the numbers on what extra space is worth to you versus the prestige of a Portland address. Now for sellers, you gotta know that overpriced listings now sit longer, and carrying costs add up very quickly. Gone are the days of 20+ bids within hours of listing. Price your home realistically based on the most recent comparable sales, not what your neighbor got in 2023. Invest in professional staging and pre-listing inspections to stand out amid growing options. When buyers have choices, presentation matters more. A well-staged home that shows perfectly can still generate multiple offers. You can also time your listing for early spring when peak buyer demand is to avoid the slower end of summer periods. Seasonal timing matters more in a balanced market than it did during the frenzy when everything sold regardless of when it was listed. So now you know why Portland's housing market has shifted from the pandemic era frenzy to a more balanced, strategic environment. Prices are adjusting, inventory is increasing, and both buyers and sellers need to adapt their approaches. If you want someone who actually understands these local dynamics, you can email me, which is down in the description. I specialize in working with clients who value thorough market analysis, and I can guide you through any doubts about this market that you might have. If you're interested in the suburban opportunities, check this video out. In it, I tell you exactly where in Portland and why you should be looking to get an early deal before anybody else does. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.